Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you for tuning in and checking out my latest video. And in this week's video, I want to speak to you about a guy who is one of the toughest fighters inside and outside the ring. And I want to bring you back to the golden era of heavyweight boxing and speak about George Chuvalo. And before we get any farther into the video, I want to make sure you guys tune in to the end of the video because I reached out to a boxing legend to get his thoughts on George Chuvalo, so you don't want to miss out on that. So let's get right into the career of George Chuvalo. This is a guy with a record of 73 victories, 18 defeats, and 2 draws. 64 of his victories come via KO. And when I look at George Chuvalo, this is a guy who fought the best heavyweights. He fought Muhammad Ali twice. He fought George Foreman, Joe Frazier, Floyd Patterson, Ernie Terrell, Jerry Quarry, Cleveland Williams, Mike DeJean. Absolutely outstanding fighters. And believe it or not, in 90 plus fights, George Chuvalo was never knocked down. And in my opinion, George Chuvalo has the best chin in the history of the heavyweight division. And now I want to get into some memorable fights in the career of George Chuvalo. So I want to speak about his first fight with Muhammad Ali that happened in 1966 in Toronto, Canada. So in this fight, to keep it short, Muhammad Ali wins the fight in a 15-round unanimous decision. But George Chuvalo puts on an excellent performance, coming in is a late replacement for Ernie Terrell, so he takes the fight on short notice, ends up getting some excellent body work in the fight, and sends Muhammad Ali to the hospital, and George Chuvalo that night went out dancing with his wife. And after the fight, Muhammad Ali had some really nice comments to say about George Chuvalo. He said that George Chuvalo was the toughest opponent he had ever faced, and his late great trainer, the great Angelo Dundee, said that George Chuvalo was relentless and he never stops coming, and you gotta admire a fighter like that. So some great words from two legends of boxing. And the next fight I want to speak to you guys about is a fight between him and Joe Frazier. So in that fight with Joe Frazier, George Chuvalo actually had his orbital bone broken, and it was so serious that they actually had to do reconstructive surgery on his face. And a lot of fighters, it would shorten their career or they wouldn't fight too many fights after that. But not a guy like George Chuvalo. This guy is one of the toughest, and he fought 20 plus fights after his fight with Joe Frazier. Absolutely mind-boggling in my opinion. And I want to get into some achievements that George Chuvalo had in the sport of boxing. This is a guy who was a long-time Canadian heavyweight champion, a guy with 64 KOs on his resume, did some excellent body work in his fights with Muhammad Ali and Floyd Patterson, and also a ton of heart, durable, and one of the greatest chins of all time. And when I speak about George Chuvalo, unfortunately I have to bring out some tragic events that happened in his life. He lost his 3 sons due to drug-related deaths, and his wife also committed suicide. And believe it or not, George Chuvalo actually relives the past and brings up the stories about his son's drug use. He travels across Canada to educate people on drugs and to tell the story about how drugs affected his family. It's very courageous. I couldn't imagine bringing up some of these old memories. Just goes to show you how great of a man George Chuvalo is, and he does excellent work on that front. And if you want to know more about George Chuvalo, there's actually an excellent book that he just put out a couple months ago. Excellent read. You should definitely check that out. And also, if you ever want to check out some of George Chuvalo's interviews, it's hard to believe this guy was in so many fights. When you listen to this guy, you wouldn't even know that he was a professional boxer. Absolutely outstanding. If you guys can share this video, I really appreciate it, because this is a man who is a hero of mine, and I believe his story should be told, and everybody should know who George Chuvalo is. So thank you very much, guys, for checking out the video. And now I'm going to leave you with a guy who shared the ring with George Chuvalo.